Hi guys! So now we are in the 35th gene key, and this is a gene key that goes from the shadow of hunger to the gift of adventure in the city of boundlessness. It's paired with the 5th gene key with the shadow of impatience and the city of timelessness. And we can see, of course, that those two programming partners, impatience and hunger in the shadow frequency, that they keep society and human beings in a lot of turbulence. And it's also a gene key or gate that makes up the channel of transistoriness, together with the 36 gate or gene key. So this channel goes from the emotional center, and the 36 gene key is about turbulence, and it's about that kind of, the sexual desire, wanting to, the turbulence in that emotional center that often comes from a desire that, that leads us into crisis instead of getting us into something beautiful, but in which there is also the possibility for compassion and humanity. And then it connects with the 35th gate that is in the throat center, and that expresses something. All the gates of the throat center has an expression, and here it's about as an expression of hunger or an expression of boredom in the shadow frequency. So there is a seeking of an experience or something on the outside that can calm that hunger. This gene key is the amino acid tryptophan, which is what helps producing serotonin, the neurotransmitter in our brains. And serotonin is that well-being neurotransmitter that makes us feel satiated, that makes us feel, happy and content. So in the I Ching, the original name for this gate, for this hexagram, was progress. So we can see that in the shadow frequency, we're seeking progress in the outer. We're seeking for something on the outside that can calm our hunger so that we can feel better on the inside. And especially through this channel, it comes from like seeking experiences. And we can also see, I sometimes feel like this channel it has a similar flavor to the third line of the hexagram, because the third line is also about experience and energy. And it can get in trouble when it has an experience one day and then the next day it wants to play with something else. And that's very similar to this experimental way that we have in the 35-36, where an experience you only need to have it once. And I think that Ra, in the Line Companion, he says, making love in a boat, that's really dangerous, because if it's just like you don't know you're in the water, you don't know where you're going, and you could even die from it. So you don't need to have that experience every day. It's just something that you kind of want to have done, and that's very much the kind of adventure that actually the 35 is seeking. And other people, if you don't have this channel, maybe you have a passion and you want to repeat that passion, but that's not what the 35, 36 is here for. It's here for having that experience and then tomorrow seeking for another experience. And in this hunger that can be, somewhat obsessive and unconscious, it can use other people's and situations just in order to have its own experiences. And this is with all the lines of 35. Maybe the line 1 to 3 are doing it more, kind of in an egoistic way, but there is also in the higher lines can be like a kind of manipulation in doing it. So in the shadow frequency, it doesn't matter what line we have, they're all functioning from a kind of self-serving agenda, unconscious agenda, instead of a higher frequency that would serve the whole. So when we look at it as well from the codon ring perspective, we see that it's alone, the 35, in the Ring of Miracles. And this is, I mean, I feel like this is a lot the whole story of the gene keys kind of in one codon, because when it comes to tryptophan and serotonin, how does that change? It's something we actually produce inside our body. And what makes the serotonin production or levels in our brain go up are when we are experiencing love. And so breaking through hunger is done through love. Like that is that ingredients that it's going to make us go from actually seeking something outer to calm our hunger, to going inside and shifting something through love, so that we already can have an experience inside that we are content, that we are happy, that we are satiated. And then from that inside we can go out and share light as an adventure, which is the gift frequency. And also, of course, what helps here is the programming partner, because when we are in impatience, we don't do that. We don't go in to the heart, but we seek on the outside. So when the fifth gene comes in, when it's patience, it's much easier to come back to the heart. And part of the art of contemplation as well, and the pausing, when we have those, when we feel this craving and this hunger and this boredom, if we can pause for a moment and have a little bit of patience instead of going out and seek another pointless experience. And this is interesting too, in integral human design, the shadow frequency of this channel of experience, the 36, 30, 35, it's called pointlessness, because it's like another experience, but for what, you know? So when we go in and when we come back to the heart, and when that miracle happens, that actually automatically our body produces higher levels of serotonin that would make us more happy and see the world in more colors, and tune us into our own adventure. We start sharing that adventure with the world, and it's a kind of miracle. And that for me is it's the message of the gene keys, that through love, through raising the frequency through love, that's where everything unlocks. And what more can we say about it? I feel like something that is worth noting in today's world is that there is a very high consumption of antidepressants. And when we look, especially in the countries where people have a high standard of living, so Canada, Australia, the United States, the UK, the Scandinavian countries, there's the highest usage of antidepressants. And antidepressants are the most common kind, are those that inhibits the uptake of serotonin, so that we have more serotonin circulating in our brains. And also that makes the receptors for other neurotransmitters are kind of busy with serotonin. So for example, dopamine is something that is not going to function. We're going to have less dopamine as well. And dopamine is kind of even stronger neurotransmitter in a way than serotonin, that really gives us these feelings of like strong love or really strong happiness. So what we say with antidepressants is that we take away like the really low and the really high, right? And we kind of stay in that zone where we don't feel that much. And knowing that the highest usage of antidepressants are for women between 17 and 45, which is exactly in that fertile age when we become mothers. And knowing that the highest usage are with young mothers that are probably a little bit even deprived from feeling that love and that happiness and everything with their children, because they are not function. I'm not saying, maybe it's too strong to say we're not functioning as who we are, but at least we could say we're changing our brain chemistry. And maybe I should just speak from like a human design and gene key perspective, because of course when we speak about it from like a mental disorder perspective, there's also of course a bigger question, is it better to take it or not? For me, what scares me is that when you feel a little down and you go to your general doctor, you can get antidepressants very, very easily. And maybe they're going to tell you, take them for 6 months and then you stop. But we all know that when we start playing with brain chemistry, there are people that have been on it for decades, and it's not that easy to get off it. Also because there are like vertigo and there's so many other side effects that you can have when you start, but then they calm down. But then when you get out of it, all these side effects that are more physiological also come back. So the body adapts to that new chemistry that we put in it. So for me this is a question that is important. And also the fact that when we look at gene keys and human design, we say that the human being is right now purifying the emotional center. And how do we do that? It's by letting the shadows come up to the surface and seeing that and allowing them and even embracing them. And with the gene keys, knowing that it's through the shadow that the gift comes through, right? So what we want to do in that emotional center is we have the shadows of turbulence, of weakness, of dishonor, of reaction, victimization, desire. And I would say that the hunger and the cravings of the 35, even if it's in the throat center, is part of that, of those emotions. And what we want to do is to be able to take them up to the surface and then become that neutral witness that I'm speaking about often, or the observer of that, and find that space inside so that we can allow them to dissolve, transmute, and then it's kind of that purification that then makes us come back to our G center and make the life energy from the sacral center, flow up through the G center, the love, the direction, the knowing who we are, and then that is expressed through our creative expression in the throat. And that is what Ra was speaking about, driven being, the new human being that worked through those 3 centers, where the instincts and the ajna and the emotional, like those awareness centers, they fall off, you could say, and we live also in another, like in the pentas, like there are electromagnetics between those centers that connect us to other people, and even in a way that relating becomes very different. So the fact that we would shut down our emotions and not be able to look at them, that is something that for me is it's against our evolution. So whether we do it through the shadow of the 35th gene key, where we that we become slaves for our cravings, or we do it by taking something that inhibits the uptake of serotonin in the brain, so that we think that we aren't hungry, although the shadow is still there, but we just push it down. It's kind of just like two ways of doing the same thing. And really what this gene key, what we were saying before, wants to show us is that life is a miracle, and that the progress happens on the inside first. And once we have made that shift on the inside, from hunger to adventure, and see that life actually on the outside shifts when we shift on the outside, and that it becomes more colorful when we come from the heart than when we come from this craving of wanting something, or this boredom that we can't stand anymore. And that the integral human design says that it's kind of pointless after a while. It can be fun and we can learn from it, and other people can learn from it by watching us, but the outer progress cannot happen in expense of the inner progress. And I love the wisdom keepers, Rosie Aronson's wisdom keepers, that are the deck of cards. And in the questions of contemplation, it's about, the 35 really in a higher frequency. It's about acts of kindness and giving without expecting anything back, giving unconditionally. That's really this gene key, the expression of this gene key in the higher frequency. And it's of course it has to do with unconditional love. So it is an expression of that coming back to the heart, of living so much your own adventure, so that acts of kindness and just giving from that love becomes something very natural. So yeah, I think this is the contemplation of of the 35th, and it's a very, very interesting gene key, and especially in today's world with how we live and how we try to fix the problems and the cravings and the boredom and desire that are part of life, instead of allowing it and looking at it and learning from it and coming back with it. So thank you.